we've been doing a lot of factoring, and we're not just going to factor for the sake of factoring. We actually have a purpose, and that purpose is to be able to solve equations, and ultimately to be able to write equations for, yes, story problems, and solve those. So we're going to start looking at how we can solve equations and where factoring fits into that. The place we want to start is with something called the zero factor property, and we're just going to use that. That's the key item for how we actually solve the equations. The factoring is all the mechanics involved in it. So let's take a look at this. What exactly have we been doing, and where is it going? So far, we have factored expressions. Now, you might remember an expression is just a bunch of terms. It's not set equal to anything. When you have an expression, you can rearrange it, but you will still end up with an expression. You're not going to get any kind of number out of it. We're going to work now with equations. Equations have equal signs. And you can see the word equal in it. And from equations, we are going to get numbers. So an example of an equation, and it's a type of equation that you will see a lot of, is something like x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. It's different from the expressions we've been working with in that now we've said this thing equals 0. And what our problem is now is to find out what values of x, what x's, will give us 0 if we substitute them in. And we're not going to spend all day sampling different x's and seeing what works. That would be a waste of time. What we are going to do is use this thing called the zero factor property to let us find out what those values are quickly and easily in combination with factoring. The zero factor property is this. If I have the product A times B, and I say that it's equal to 0, that is true if and only if A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0. In other words, if this product's going to be 0, one of these things has to be 0. So let's look at how that is with a number just to make it very, hopefully very obvious. If I have 3 times 0, that's going to give me 0. But if I had 3 times 2, that is never going to give me 0. It's going to give me 6. I have to get one of these. Here's your A and here's your B. I have to have at least one of them 0. So we'll use that concept in solving equations. And let's just look at something that's already factored. Let's solve this x times x plus 1 equals 0. Well, from my zero factor property, that's going to be true. Here's my A and here's my B. If A equals 0, or it will be true if B equals 0. Well, that means it'll be true if x is equal to 0 or x plus 1 equals 0. There's nothing more to do with that. I have a number right there for x. Here, I can solve for x, subtracting 1 from each side. X is equal to -1. Now, I caution you at this point, you've been solving a lot of equations. They've been primarily linear equations. Don't get in a big hurry and just start slapping down numbers. Write out the steps to make sure that you actually put the signs in the right places and get the numbers in the right places. Now, our method that we're going to use in solving equations is going to be to first of all, get whatever you're given equal to 0. You may have to do some rearranging. Then you're going to factor. Then we will set each factor equal to 0. That's the zero factor property. And then we will solve each factor for x. Or y or m or whatever letter's there. And finally, we will check in the original equation, especially when you're taking a test. But again, what you practice in your homework is what you will end up doing, so practice good habits. Let's take the case where we need to solve x plus 6 times 2x minus 3 equals 0. And let's just step through this recipe. The first step is to get it equal to 0. That's already done for us. Everything with a letter is on one side, and we just have the number 0 on the other. So we're good. Second thing is to factor. Well, that's already done for us too. So we're up to setting each factor to 0. So we'll take x plus 6 and set it equal to 0, and 2x minus 3 equal to 0, because this statement will be true as long as I can make this 0 or this 0, and there are going to be two conditions where that takes place. Now we need to solve each of these little equations. Subtracting 6 from each side, x is going to equal negative 6, or on this one we add 3, and 2x is equal to positive 3, and then you divide by 2, x is equal to 3/2. Those are the answers. Either of those values of x will work. They're both solutions. And to check it, which I will go ahead and do, we're going to put them in the original. Well, the original was x plus 6 times 2x minus 3 equals 0. So let's put in a negative 6. Negative 6 plus 6, 2 times negative 6 minus 3. Is that equal to 0? Well, negative 6 plus 6 is equal to 0. So I'm going to have 0 times this other thing, and that is indeed equal to 0, so I'm good. I don't even have to worry about evaluating that other little piece there. And let's take the positive 3/2 and substitute it in for x. And we're asking the question, is that equal to 0? Well, those 2's cancel, and we'll have 3/2 plus 6. I'm not going to worry about evaluating that because all the important stuff's happening over here. And I have 3 minus 3. Is that equal to 0? Yes, it is, because 3 minus 3 is 0. So we're good. Now, I will be going through more examples and, yes, story problems in other segments. This just gives you the basic outline of how you apply the zero factor property to solving an equation. And that's the end of this segment.